everybody. Happy Tuesday. Your ELA teachers are here, and we're sporting some Boston Collegiate headwear for your enjoyment. Today, we're going to be talking about narratives and where we're going to review our story arc and dialogue skills that we learned at the beginning of the year so that we can practice them and show our skills in a narrative. So before you move on and continue to watch this video, please think, have I submitted my essay? If not, turn this off and go back and make sure that that essay is finished first before you continue watching this video. All right, so first we're going to do some review on what a story arc is and the contents of a great narrative. So first you want to start with creating characters and setting. You're going to think about who is in my story and where are those characters going to be. You're also going to think about a conflict. Every great story has a conflict, and that is a problem or issue that the characters have to face and that they overcome at the end of the story. The exposition is the beginning of your narrative. When you're introducing the setting and the characters and giving a beginning of the story. Then you're going to move up in your narrative to the rising action. And this is where you start to introduce your conflict. You're going to introduce the interactions between the characters, and you're going to start to build on that problem. The climax is the most important and most exciting part of your narrative, and that's where your characters are going to realize the big problem that they have faced, and it is either the turning point or the big excitement. Then there's the falling action. That is where the characters are going to figure out the solution to that problem and start to solve it. The last part of your story is the resolution, and that is the ending. That is how everybody comes together, solves the problem, and lives happily ever after, maybe. The other part of planning your narrative is making sure that you have a clear beginning, middle, and end. In the beginning of your story, as we said before, you need to think about who your characters are and the setting of the story, as in where it takes place. The middle of your story is where the conflict happens, how they build up to that problem, overcome that problem, and then build down to the end where they learn their lesson or something has been solved and things have changed.
All right, so within that story that you're going to tell in your assignment this week, you're also maybe going to have conversations between your characters, right? And when we think about author's craft, the piece of author's craft that allows us to write conversations between our characters is dialogue. And dialogue, when we're writing, has a very specific format that we need to follow. It's not quite the same as when we write dialogue in a script, like we did way back at the beginning of the year. So we're going to review really quickly, how is it that we write good dialogue in our stories? So first and most importantly, in order to know that the words you're writing are things that you intend for your characters to say out loud, you're going to put those in quotation marks, right? That's the punctuation we use to show that our character is talking out loud. Those are those little pink marks on either side of the words quotation marks here. Every time a new character speaks in your story, you want to start a new line and then indent, right? So you want it to come in a little bit. That's just the way to show the flow of the conversation. Because if you just put a bunch of quotes next to each other, your reader might get very confused trying to figure out who's talking now, who's talking here. So by starting a new line each time and indenting, your reader can understand every time a new quote happens that a new person is speaking. If you're not sure how to indent, because I've seen a lot of people just hit the space bar a bunch of times, that's not the best way to do it. The best way to do an indent on your line is to look at the top left of your keyboard. It's like this corner over here. And you'll see a button that says Tab. That is the key that you can click that will indent your line for you. So practice using that indent key, the Tab key, when you are writing your dialogue. And then lastly, we want to make sure we're using dialogue tags. So after you put your quote, you want to make sure you include a couple words at the end to explain both who is saying this and how are they saying it, right? Because we need to be precise with our language, like we've been talking about, to understand and paint a more vivid picture of what is happening and what we as the author intend for our characters to be saying. So for example, here I have 3 different verbs I could use as a dialogue tag for a quote. I have screamed, whispered, and chuckled. If you think of each of those words, the way that a person would say a quote in that manner would sound different, right? If I scream, I might be very angry. But if I whisper, I might be keeping a secret. And if I chuckle, then maybe I'm doing something naughty, right? So picking a specific word allows your reader to think about how your character is feeling as they're saying these words in the quotations. So now let's look at an example of a couple lines of dialogue you might see in a story that we would write this week. So if I was going to write a story about maybe eating lunch with my advisory, I could include this dialogue right here. I can't believe you stole my burrito, I said to Mr. Ellis. Sorry, not sorry, he replied. So here you see there are 2 characters, me and Mr. Ellis, talking to each other. However, because we're missing our quotation marks and our proper punctuation, it's kind of hard to follow the conversation. So let's fix that together. Up here, we see that this line starts with a line of dialogue. I'm saying to Mr. Ellis, I can't believe you stole my burrito. So if this is where the thing I say ends, I should add punctuation. I'll make it an exclamation point here. And then a quotation mark to close it out. So now I know that is where the words that I'm saying to Mr. Ellis end, and I begin my dialogue tag. I said to Mr. Ellis. Well, when we think about our dialogue tags, we want to be very specific with the words we choose, right? The word said, I don't really know the manner in which I'm saying it to him. Am I happy that he stole my burrito? Am I angry that he stole my burrito? So let me pick a more specific word. Maybe I'll use the word shouted. So because I use the word shouted here, now the reader, when they look at this, they can think to themselves about how is Mr. Stoffer feeling about Mr. Ellis stealing his burrito? Well, if I'm shouting, I can't believe you stole my burrito, then I'm probably not very happy with him, am I? Now, after this, we see that the characters switch, and Mr. Ellis is talking to me. So we know, because of the rules we just went over, that anytime a new character speaks, we start a new line, and we use that tab key to indent. Now you can see this is where Mr. Ellis starts talking back to me. And once again, I'm going to add in quotation marks to show the beginning and the end of what Mr. Ellis said. You can also add a comma if you're just going to use a period at the end and the sentence continues. Just replace that with a comma. So it would say, sorry, not sorry, he replied. And maybe I'll add one more word there, just again to make it as specific as possible. Sarcastically. If Mr. Ellis knows what he did was wrong, then maybe he'd be sarcastic in his response. Sorry, not sorry. So see how by adding our punctuation and our indentations and more specific verbs, we are able to create a vivid image of what this conversation might sound like.
So now that we've had a really good recap of how to structure a story from beginning, middle, and end, and what to include, and also reviewing how characters might interact with each other if they're speaking to one another, and including the correct punctuation, you're going to have to write about something. So the ELA teachers have come up with these 3 prompts. Prompt number 1, tell a story about one moment that has happened to you since being in quarantine. Now, if you want to use this option, we want to hear from you and your perspective about what life has been like for you since we've been away from school. So if you want to narrow it down to one particular moment or experience that has happened to you in these past couple weeks that we've been away from school, it would be a really cool exercise to write about it in this narrative form. Option 2. Everyone has a unique journey to school every day. Write a story informing the reader about what your personal journey to school looks like. Now, for this option, this is kind of a preview for the next story that we will read together as a ELA class, where the main character does have a pretty specific, long, difficult journey to school every day in terms of how far away he is. Also, we haven't had our normal routines since we've been away from school. So instead of sleeping in and waking up, we used to actually get up at a very specific time, and maybe there were certain things that we needed to do in order to make sure that we got to school on time. And that might look different for everyone who goes to BCCS. So it's really cool to have an opportunity to share with other people what your specific journey to school looks like compared to somebody else's. Option number 3. Write a unique story that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. If you choose this option, maybe you've already been working on some creative writing on the side, and maybe you want to be able to share that with your ELA teachers and the rest of your peers. This is kind of an optional free write. The only thing that you have to do is be creative and tell us what you want to write about. So next week, we do have off for Patriots Day on Monday. So when you wake up Monday morning on the 20th, go back to sleep, because you actually have an opportunity to just relax and make sure that you get some rest. The following day, that is when our academic week is going to start on Tuesday, April 21st. So if you open up Google Classroom on Tuesday, April 21st, the thing that you're going to be doing is watching this video and brainstorming which one of the options you want to write for your story. Wednesday, April 22nd, you're going to begin actually drafting and writing in the Google document. And Thursday, you're going to put some finishing touches on it. And then Friday at the end of the week in our Friday Zoom class, we're actually going to share and submit our stories. The ELA teachers really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to be creative, to share our ideas, and have a little bit of a break before we start our new text that we read in class. Finally, always let us know if you have any questions. You can email us, message us on Google Hangouts, maybe even give us a call on Google Voice if you know where that number exists. Either way, we want to make sure that if you have any questions, come to office hours, let us know, and we'd be happy to help.